When it rains, it definitely pours, man. Stephanie White is back in the hot seat, dog. Now, there have been several videos coming out that various people have been posting showing Stephanie White at practice. Now, when practice first started up, after the CBA negotiations and stuff was over with, we was noticing something, a trend within Stephanie White. And to me, it looked like she wasn't coaching. Looked like she was just standing there clapping. Like a what? Cheerleader. That's what she was doing. It was a whole lot of her not coaching. Somebody who was coaching is the assistant coach.
Before a single official tip-off whistle blows, before the first jump ball of the regular season leaves the referee's hands, and before Caitlyn Clark laces up her shoes for Game 1, the Indiana Fever are already on fire. Not the good kind of fire that burns through opposing defenses and lights up scoreboards. This is the kind of fire that consumes franchises from the inside out. The kind that starts in comment sections and practice gym footage, spreads through social media like a California wildfire, and eventually forces front offices into emergency meetings they never saw coming. The name at the center of this inferno is Stephanie White. And the question burning on the lips of millions of fans, analysts, and basketball observers is devastatingly simple. Is the head coach of the Indiana Fever actually coaching, or is she just showing up? What started as whispers in fan communities has exploded into a full-scale controversy that threatens to overshadow everything the Indiana Fever have worked to build during this transformational era of women's basketball. Practice footage, mic'd-up videos, cryptic player comments, and passionate fan spending decisions have all collided into a perfect storm that has the organization scrambling for answers before the season even has a chance to find its footing. This is the story of how a few seconds of practice video, a microphone, and a clipboard turned into the biggest coaching controversy in recent WNBA history. It began innocently enough. The Indiana Fever organization, eager to build excitement and momentum heading into the new season, decided to release practice footage to the fan base. On paper, it was a brilliant idea. The world had never paid more attention to women's basketball. Caitlyn Clark had single-handedly shifted the cultural landscape of the sport, bringing millions of new eyes to the game. The logical move was to feed those hungry fans content, give them a behind-the-scenes look at the team, and build anticipation for what was coming. But what the fans saw when that footage dropped was not what they were expecting. Instead of witnessing a head coach in her element, commanding the floor with tactical precision and high-intensity leadership, viewers noticed something deeply troubling. Stephanie White appeared to be standing on the sideline, largely stationary, clapping. While assistant coaches were moving up and down the court with energy and purpose, running drills, making corrections, and engaging directly with players, White seemed to be occupying the role of enthusiastic spectator rather than commanding general. The internet did not let that slide for a single second. Fans immediately began asking the question that no organization wants its supporters asking about the person they hired to lead their most important team in franchise history. Who is actually running this team? Because from the footage that was released, it did not look like the head coach was doing it. Social media threads exploded. Comment sections turned into war zones. Video clips were clipped, slowed down, and analyzed frame by frame. The contrast between White's measured stillness and the animated energy of her assistants was sharp enough to cut through any attempt at damage control. Observers who had already been cautious about White's appointment felt their concerns validated in real time. And even those who had been willing to give her the benefit of the doubt found themselves shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The question was no longer theoretical. It was documented, time-stamped, and going viral. To the organization's credit, they moved quickly to respond to the growing narrative. The next move was a mic'd-up video featuring Stephanie White, designed to show fans her voice on the court, her communication style, and her presence as a leader. It was a calculated PR play meant to reframe the story, to show the world that their coach was engaged, vocal, and driving the culture of the team with purpose. It did not work. Rather than silencing the critics, the mic'd-up video became Exhibit B in the prosecution's case. Instead of tactical breakdowns, specific play calls, sharp corrections, or the kind of intense basketball dialogue that fans associate with championship-caliber coaching, what viewers heard was a series of generic affirmations. "Good job," "Nice cut," "Way to go," encouragement that you might expect from a recreational league coach working with teenagers on a Saturday morning, not a head coach responsible for managing what could be the most marketable player the WNBA has ever seen. The reaction was swift and merciless. Fans who had tuned in hoping to see evidence of strategic intelligence instead found themselves shaking their heads. One widely circulated comment captured the sentiment perfectly, noting that the video sounded more like a high school cheerleader than a professional coach tasked with developing a generational talent. Another fan pointed out the obvious irony. The Fever had released content intended to build confidence in their coach, and it had done the exact opposite. And then came the observation that really stung. Several fans noted that the organization seemed to be running a full-scale PR campaign for Stephanie White rather than promoting the players that people actually paid to watch. This perception, whether entirely fair or not, tapped into a deeper anxiety that had been building within the fan base for some time. The fear that the organization's priorities were misaligned, that instead of centering Caitlyn Clark and building everything around maximizing her historic talent, the front office was more concerned with managing optics and protecting the coaching staff from criticism. Fans made their position clear. They did not pay for tickets and merchandise to watch someone clap on the sideline. They were there for the basketball, and right now, they were not seeing evidence that the basketball was going to be good. For many longtime Indiana Fever supporters, the controversy around Stephanie White inevitably brought up comparisons to her predecessor, Brianna January. Whatever one might say about January's overall tenure and the team's results during her time, there was never a question about her energy on the court. January coached with visible fire. She moved. She communicated aggressively. She was in the thick of drills, demanding more from her players, and making her presence felt in a way that left no doubt about who was running the show. The contrast with what fans were seeing from Stephanie White was, as several observers put it, night and day. The assistant-coach dynamic became a particularly sensitive talking point. When fans watching practice footage could clearly identify an assistant who appeared more active, more directive, and more engaged with the players than the head coach, it creates a narrative problem that is almost impossible to walk back. Who is actually running this team became not just an online talking point, but a legitimate organizational question that demanded an answer. The fear was not abstract. It was rooted in what fans had already experienced. Last season had offered its share of frustrations, moments where the team looked disorganized, lacking a clear identity, and struggling to consistently deploy its best players in ways that made sense. Those memories were still fresh. And when the footage from the new coaching regime started generating the same kinds of questions, the alarm bells began ringing loudly.
I'm talking about because they in trouble. They're in a world of trouble. Now, this is the footage right here. Let me scroll down. We're going to go over this stuff here because they showed the final roster. So this is the clip. What's crazy about this clip? I missed this clip yesterday. This clip came out yesterday morning. It said, our coach allowed a supporter, Stephanie White, mic'd up.
Adding fuel to the already raging fire were questions about specific players who fans had expected to see prominently featured in practice coverage and preseason activities, but who seemed to be conspicuously absent. Lexi Hall's near invisibility in available footage raised eyebrows immediately. Was she being rested? Was there an injury concern? Or was there something more deliberate happening? A coaching decision to limit her exposure for reasons that the organization was not communicating to the public. The lack of clarity invited speculation, and in the absence of information, fans filled the void with their worst assumptions. Aaliyah Boston's situation generated similar conversation. Boston is one of the most important pieces of the Indiana Fever's roster, and a player whose development and integration are critical to the team's success. Yet fans noted that they had barely seen her during key practice sessions, with her most visible appearance coming in the game against Nigeria, which most observers dismissed as a relatively low-stakes exhibition that offered limited insight into how she would perform against elite competition. If the team's core pieces are not being developed, integrated, and featured during crucial preseason preparation, how can fans be expected to believe that they will be ready when it truly matters? The chemistry between players does not materialize on its own. It is built through repetition, trust, and deliberate coaching decisions that prioritize preparation over optics. When fans feel like the team is more focused on generating content than building winning basketball, the trust erodes in ways that take a very long time to repair. Perhaps the most alarming development for the most passionate segment of the Indiana Fever fan base came in the form of comments attributed to Sophie Cunningham regarding the team's offensive strategy. Cunningham apparently made it clear that the team was running plays specifically designed to get Kelsey Mitchell to her preferred spots on the left side of the floor. Now, Kelsey Mitchell is an excellent basketball player. She is a proven scorer who has the ability to change games. Nobody in their right mind is arguing that she should be ignored or that plays should never be designed with her in mind. But for fans who have been watching Caitlyn Clark transform the sport, and who believe that any offense not built around maximizing her ability to operate as the primary engine is fundamentally misguided, Cunningham's comment landed like a grenade. The fear that has haunted Clark's most devoted supporters since the moment she was drafted is the fear of being iced out. It is the fear that, despite her extraordinary talent, despite the fact that she has done more to grow the profile of the league than arguably any player in a generation, the coaching staff will try to fit her into a system rather than building a system around her. It is the fear that she will be parked in the corner, used as a decoy, and denied the freedom to do what she does better than almost anyone who has ever played the game. Clark herself seemed to address this anxiety directly in her recent media appearances. She has begun speaking with a new level of directness and authority, making statements that left little room for misinterpretation. The ball was going to be in her hands. The game was going to run through her. These are not the words of a player who is content to defer to a system that does not feature her. These are the words of a superstar who knows her value and is not going to be quietly diminished without making her position known. That kind of statement from a star player, while refreshing for fans, creates an interesting tension when it exists alongside a coaching philosophy that may or may not be aligned with her vision. If there is a gap between what Clark believes her role should be and what the coaching staff envisions for her, that gap will be visible within the first few games of the season. And if it is visible, the fallout will be immediate and severe. One of the most powerful and sobering elements of this entire conversation is the financial dimension. This is not simply a group of people venting frustrations online and moving on with their day. This is a measurable shift in consumer behavior that carries real consequences for the organization's bottom line. Consider the story of one devoted fan who came forward to share the scope of her investment in the Indiana Fever over the previous season. Home games, road trips to cities like Dallas and New York, official merchandise, the All-Star Game, the full experience of being a committed supporter of this team during what was supposed to be a transformational moment. The total came to thousands of dollars, representing the kind of deep financial commitment that sports organizations depend on to sustain themselves. This fan announced that she was done spending that kind of money on the Indiana Fever, specifically because of concerns about the direction of the coaching staff. She made clear that she would continue to support Caitlyn Clark personally, purchasing merchandise from Clark's individual brand partnerships, following her career closely, and cheering for her success. But the team itself? Not another dollar beyond what was absolutely necessary. When high-spending loyalists start redirecting their financial energy away from the organization and toward the personal brand of a single player, it is one of the clearest warning signs an organization can receive. It means that the fan's primary connection is to the athlete, not the franchise. And if the franchise is perceived as an obstacle to that athlete's success rather than a facilitator of it, the fans will side with the athlete every single time. The WNBA is in the middle of an unprecedented growth period driven significantly by the arrival of players like Clark. The opportunity in front of the Indiana Fever is historic. Failing to capitalize on it through poor coaching decisions or organizational mismanagement would not just be a disappointment for the team, it would be a genuine loss for the entire league. The opening game of the season against the Dallas Wings is being treated as far more than a typical season opener. It is being viewed as a referendum on the entire direction of the franchise, and by extension, on Stephanie White's viability as a head coach in this environment. The Wings are a capable team with players who are ready to exploit any weakness they encounter. If Indiana comes out looking disorganized, if the offensive sets are muddled, if Clark is not being used as the primary playmaker, or if the team lacks the cohesion and energy that a well-coached squad is supposed to project, the calls for coaching changes will not just get louder, they will become deafening. Every substitution Stephanie White makes will be scrutinized. Every play call will be debated. Every moment of apparent indecision or hesitation on the sideline will be clipped, shared, and used as evidence in the ongoing case that the organization made the wrong hire. The margin for error is essentially zero, because the expectations for this team have never been higher, and the patience of the fan base has never been thinner. On the other hand, if Indiana comes out aggressive and organized, if Clark is clearly being given the freedom to operate as the primary driver of the offense, and if the team's energy reflects the kind of purposeful preparation that fans want to see from their coaching staff, then much of this controversy will quiet down. Not disappear entirely, because the concerns raised are legitimate enough that they will not evaporate after a single good performance, but quiet down enough to give White the breathing room she needs to continue building this team. The basketball will speak. It always does. And after all the footage analysis, all the social media debates, all the fan spending decisions, and all the pointed commentary about cheerleading versus coaching, what happens on that court will carry more weight than anything else. The era of blind loyalty in professional sports is over. Fans today are more informed, more connected, and more willing to demand accountability than at any previous point in sports history. They have access to footage that previous generations never had. They can analyze frame by frame. They can compare what they see with what they were promised. They can organize their frustration into coordinated campaigns that apply genuine pressure on organizations to respond. Stephanie White is facing a level of public scrutiny that would challenge even the most experienced and confident coaches in the profession. She is working with the most watched player in the history of her league. She is leading a franchise that represents one of the most significant commercial opportunities in the sport's existence. And she is doing all of this under a microscope wielded by a fan base that has proven it will not quietly accept what it perceives as mismanagement. Whether the criticism directed at White is entirely fair is a conversation worth having. Some of it is driven by genuine concern about what the footage shows. Some of it is driven by the intense protectiveness that Clark's fans feel toward their favorite player. And some of it is driven by the natural anxiety of a fan base that has been disappointed before and is terrified of being disappointed again. But fair or not, the pressure is real. The consequences are real. The financial stakes are real. And the demands being placed on Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever organization are not going away. What fans want is not complicated. They want to see a coach who is actively coaching. They want to see an offense built around the most dynamic player on the roster. They want to see preparation, purpose, and the kind of tactical intelligence that transforms talented players into a championship-caliber team. They want to believe that the organization understands the magnitude of the moment it is living in. The clock is ticking. The weekend is here. The entire basketball world is watching. Stephanie White does not have the luxury of time, the comfort of low expectations, or the protection of a patient fan base. She has one thing: the opportunity to prove, starting right now, that she is exactly the coach this moment demands. Whether she seizes it or squanders it will define not just her legacy, but the direction of the Indiana Fever franchise for years to come. The hot seat is real, the fire is burning, and the next move belongs entirely to her. The Indiana Fever's season opener will serve as the first true test of whether this organization can meet the extraordinary moment it has been handed. Fans are watching, the league is watching, and the world that Caitlyn Clark built is waiting.